ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye dissolves a National Assembly, set new date for legislative elections.
The date of the legislative elections is set for Sunday, November 17, 2024. I am dissolving the National Assembly.
Amnesty International calls for assistance for the Sahel following a devastating humanitarian crisis. In Nigeria, the National Emergency Management Agency continues to render support to victims of the Maiduguri flood as water recedes.
We have been providing medical consumables and treating those in distress. We have also been providing water and also taking up sanitation, as you can see.
Meanwhile, Ghana's Electoral Commission describes the opposition NDC's call for a forensic audit of the voters register as premature. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Let's begin right here in Senegal, as citizens will go to the polls in 2 months to participate in new legislative elections. This was after President Bassirou Diomaye Faye dissolved the National Assembly Thursday night. This comes from a political standoff in parliament between the new government and the former presidential coalition, which held a majority in the 14th legislature. The former coalition recently blocked a bill by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye seeking to scrap 2 state institutions. Etiatisu has won this report.
For Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, a genuine collaboration with the former majority coalition in the National Assembly is impossible. He accuses his MPs of systematically blocking his bills, preventing him from implementing his policies smoothly. Bassirou Diomaye Faye decided to dissolve the parliament after consulting, he says, with the Constitutional Council, the Prime Minister, and the President of the National Assembly. The Senegalese head of state has also set a date for the legislative elections.
La date des élections législatives est ainsi fixée.
The date of the legislative elections is set for Sunday, November 17, 2024. I am dissolving the National Assembly to ask the sovereign people for their institutional means that will allow me to give substance to the systemic transformation that I promised them, and to desire sovereignly whether the National Assembly should reflect the deep aspirations of the changes that were expressed on the evening of March 24, 2024, or whether it should remain the last blocking arbiter of a fallen regime. The government guarantees the proper organization of the elections, and may the best man win.
The Senegalese president also provided an update on the audits of public fund management under the presidency of Macky Sall, announced at the start of his term. Here's Bassirou Diomaye Faye.
The results that were submitted to the Court of Auditors for validation highlighted a public management prone to frivolity. The shortcomings noted have led to a serious deterioration in our country's public finances. I want to ensure that responsibilities will be located at all levels of the administrative and political chain.
This dissolution of the National Assembly thus postpones the date of Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko's general policy statement. His government was under a threat of a motion of no confidence.
A report by Eche Atesu. We remain in Senegal as the search to try to find possible survivors of the weekend migrant boat accident continues in Mbour, a department of the Chess region. The capsized boat was carrying around 150 people, mostly from the Mbour department, according to a local elected official. On the ground, there is anger and dismay as the grieving families mourn the children who died at sea. Lack of work and social pressure are cited as the main factors for departures towards the migration route. Mustafa Jakite took a tour of Mbour and sent in this report, voiced by Augustine Kole.
In Bo, the morning remains difficult for its nearly 300,000 inhabitants. In the Njai family, they are still mourning the death of Mata. At 38 years old, the husband and father of two boarded Okinoon for Spain on Sunday. wearing a white cap and with red eyes. His older brother, Ibrahim Njai, is still in shock.
He remains calm. He really had no problems. It's been a month without a job. So access to this opportunity transformed him, providing protection and procedure. I never thought he would take the call. Moreover, he would condemn the attitude of going on the boats.
Like Mata, more than 100 people were on board the vessel. Only 8 survivors have been recorded. On the beach, angry young people lamented the lack of work and social pressure, which are the main reasons for these departures, according to Isa, a young fisherman.
We, the youth, are not ready to give up on migration because we have lost hope. This country no longer inspires dreams. There must be real change for us to stay.
On Wednesday, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye announced the establishment of a hotline to track down traffickers. This news was well received in Bo, but there is still a sense of dissatisfaction. Muhammadu Barrow, president of the Migration, Security and Development Commission at the Bo Town Hall, commented.
The first condition for me is to have a message of calm and hope, because we cannot live in a country where we talk about oil and gas and yet the youth cannot find hope to stay in Senegal.
For now, firefighters and the Senegalese Navy continue their search at sea to try to find more bodies of victims.
A report by Mustafa Jagitian, voiced by Augustine Colley. Meanwhile, Amnesty International is calling for more attention to the Sahel region faced with devastating consequences of insecurity, socio-political and challenging economic indices. The rights watchdog says the recent humanitarian crisis occasioned by the far-reaching impact of climate change exposes the region to greater risks and vulnerabilities. From droughts to heat waves and floods, populations in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger and Chad are counting losses, including human lives and livestock, while basic infrastructure have been destroyed. Ousmane Diallo is a senior researcher for the Sahel at Amnesty International, West and Central Africa.
It's important to keep attention focused on the Sahel. We have seen, in a certain way, withdrawal of international actors in the Sahel, a lot of criticism and polarization, but the humanitarian needs in the region are increasing, whether in Mali or in Burkina Faso. We have seen the case of these recent flash floods that occurred from Niger to Mali, and that have caused at least 300 deaths in Niger and more than 300 in Chad, around 40 in Mali, according to the latest tally. The needs are very present, despite disconnect or the tensions, the political tensions in their lives. Citizens have everyday needs that have to be filled, and it's important that humanitarian actors remain on the ground to support the government and also, especially, populations in need in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger.
Ousmane Diallo is senior researcher for the Sahel at Amnesty International, West and Central Africa.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As a reminder, we are live on WADR.org and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Days after the flood disaster in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital in northeastern Nigeria, the National Emergency Management Agency NEMA says flood waters is beginning to recede and normalcy is returning to the metropolis. Director General of NEMA, Zubaida Umar, revealed this while giving an update on the current situation in the worst flooding occurrence in the history of the country. Victims of the disaster are being sheltered temporarily at 8 camps provided by the state government. It is estimated that over 400,000 people are displaced, thousands of homes submerged, and at least 30 people killed. Addressing journalist Siraju Abdullahi, the Northeast Zonal Coordinator of NEMA, detailed efforts so far in the operations, including the provision of additional camps and medical and water treatment supplies.
We have been providing medical consumables and treating those in distress. We have also been providing water and also taking up the sanitation, as you can see the way the place is. We will continue to provide additional shelter, and we are here observing the wet rations that is being provided by the Borno State government. Meanwhile, our supplies are also on the way. More personnel, more food items, and also more medical consumables. The GM Busepa was assigned yesterday by the state government to provide chlorine, permethrin, so that we would avoid any outbreak of diseases. As you can see, we are also together with doctors from the Nigerian Medical Association. They are also here to provide support.
Siraj Abdullahi is the Northeast Zonal Coordinator of the Nigeria National Management Agency. And now to the Sahel, particularly Mali, the Authority for the Protection of Personal Data warns web TV channels and bloggers against the dissemination of health data, judicial matters, and individuals' private lives. The APDP states that apart from professional journalists, anyone involved in these practices will be fined between 5 and 20 million CFA francs as stipulated by the law on cybercrime repression. This decision has been welcomed by the press house in Bamako. Oge Berika has won this report, filed in by our Bamako correspondent Ali Cham.
In front of several journalists, President of the Malian Press House began by denouncing these practices without naming the perpetrators. According to Banjogu Dante, this act tarnished the image of journalism.
Today, a situation is being maintained, a situation that has turned Mali into a country of media and dangerous media, which touches on everything without professional qualifications, without ethical training, without ontological training. And this already finances a blow which insults the Republic, which insults people everywhere in the name of what? Politics and advertising. The APDP has shown the way to say no to these practices from now on.
L'APDP vient de montrer le chemin de dire non désormais à ces pratiques.
From now on, the Personal Data Protection Authority specifies that any other person, apart from professional journalists, must no longer disseminate health, legal or private data of an individual. The press house said it was committed to supporting the APDP initiative to clean up the Malian media space.
We are ready to play our full role in cleaning up the media space so that this press becomes more real.
It is important to note that people who violate this decision will have to pay a fine of 5 to 20 million CFA francs according to the law on the repression of cybercrime.
Oge Birika with a report by our Bamako correspondent Ali Cham. And in Burkina Faso, authorities have dealt a major blow to the e-cigarette trade. In a recent joint operation, the Mobile Brigade for Economic Control and Fraud Control and the Basque National Police seized several thousand shishas in the country. This seizure in Burkina Faso comes within the framework of the application of a joint decree aimed at strengthening the control of tobacco products imported into the country. According to this decree, products that do not comply with the standards in force are subject to confiscation and destruction. This operation allowed the two forces involved to seize merchandise estimated at 26 million CFA francs, or about $43,000. According to the statement jointly signed by the two units, cigarettes and other tobacco products imported for consumption in Burkina Faso that don't comply with the requirements in force in the country will be confiscated and destroyed under regulatory conditions. And just before the break, Ghana's Electoral Commission has responded to calls by the main opposition National Democratic Congress (NDC) for a forensic audit of the voters' register, describing the call as premature. The NDC identified 5 issues and requested a forensic audit alongside a re-exhibition of the register as it serves notice to embark on a series of nationwide protests until the EC hits to its request. From Accra, Nadia Tete reports.
At a press conference in Accra, the Electoral Commission acknowledged discrepancies in the voters' register identified by the NDC, who called for a forensic audit and re-exhibition. The EC, however, noted that these issues, such as missing names and deceased voters, had already been identified internally and were being addressed. The Commission stressed that the exhibition itself acts as an audit to fix such errors. They questioned the need for a forensic audit at this stage, urging the NDC to provide specific details of their findings, which have yet to be submitted.
While the Commission did not reject the proposal for a forensic audit of the register, the question is, what purpose will a forensic audit serve? The Commission is of the view that the forensic audit is not what is needed at this time. It is premature.
The EC assured the public of a credible register for the 2024 elections, calling for dialogue rather than street protests, and encouraged the flag bearer of the NDC and former President Mahama to help facilitate talks.
Taking to the streets will not ensure a credible register. It will only cause tensions and suspicions which are unwarranted. We call on the former President of Ghana, an eminent and respected statesman of the Republic, to encourage and bring his party to the table, as that is the best place to address issues and ascertain the truth regarding the voters' register.
But the NDC insists on proceeding with their protests. Here is Deputy General Secretary of the party, Mustafa Gbande.
So we will hit the streets. We'll remain in the streets until the right thing is done. So if they think that the demonstration is just to come and hand them over a letter, then they should advise themselves.
For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye dissolves the National Assembly and sets a new date for legislative elections. Amnesty International calls for assistance for the Sahel following a devastating humanitarian crisis. In Nigeria, the National Emergency Management Agency continues to support victims of the Maiduguri flood disaster. Ghana's Electoral Commission describes the opposition NDC's call for a forensic audit of the voter register as premature. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Health authorities in Liberia have confirmed 3 new cases of Mpox. These cases tested positive at the National Reference Laboratory of the National Public Health Institute of Liberia. This brings the total number of confirmed positive Mpox cases in Liberia to 5 since the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC, and the World Health Organization WHO declared Mpox a public health emergency of international concern about 3 weeks ago. Details with Francis Boniface.
The 3 new confirmed cases are from Lofa, Sino, and River G counties in the southeast and northern regions of the country, respectively. This follows the timely launch of the National Incident Management System (IMS) at the headquarters of the National Public Health Institute of Liberia, NPHIL, last week, which has since begun mobilizing resources and coordinating the national response. The Liberian government stated that the National Reference Laboratory of the National Public Health Institute, NPHIL, is collaborating with the Ministry of Health and international partners to proactively mount the response to prevent the spread of Mpox virus among the population. Last week, an NPHIL team visited border entry points and assessed isolation centers in Nimba and Bon counties to heighten preparations, increase contact tracing, and enhance diagnostic procedures as the IMS responds to the sporadic cases of Mpox that are appearing in 2 opposite geographic locations of the country. The Health Ministry further advises the population to remain calm, wash and sanitize their hands, avoid contacts with suspected persons and animals, and also strongly advises to practice safe and protected sexual behavior. The communities are also advised to report suspected cases of Mpox to the nearest health facilities and authorities.
Francis Boniface with that report. Elsewhere in Sierra Leone, President Julius Maada Bio has reaffirmed his dedication to maintaining peace, security, and stability in the country. His comment came during a meeting with a delegation from the Michigan State National Guard, which was accompanied by the United States Ambassador to Sierra Leone and the Deputy Minister of Defense, Colonel Retired Mona Brima Masakwai. The Deputy Minister expressed gratitude to President Bio, noting that their visit was aimed at finalizing a state partnership program between Sierra Leone and the Michigan State National Guard to foster a lasting collaboration between the two institutions. Massaquoi highlighted that this initiative, which began under its predecessor in 2019, has now reached a significant milestone with the signing of a letter of consent.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest on this edition of Newslink is Professor Gorgui Dieng, a Senegalese political analyst. Professor Dieng joins us on the dissolution of Senegal's 14th legislature by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye on Thursday, September 12, 2024. Diomaye Faye's decision followed approval from the Constitutional Council and consultations with Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko and the President of the just dissolved National Assembly. However, Dieng holds a divergent view.
The Constitutional Council had already told him that he had a right to do so as of September the 12th. But the problem here is that he should not have, that's my own opinion, he should not have dissolved Parliament after setting a date beyond September the 12th. Because nobody obliged him to set a date on September the 13th. He knew that he was going to dissolve Parliament, or his Prime Minister had decided that Parliament was going to be dissolved, because this is also another interpretation that we can have. Because the Prime Minister had said that Parliament would be dissolved on September the 12th. And he himself said, that is to say, the President, he took a decision and convened a special session of Parliament a day after that, that is to say, September the 13th. And then it is what the Prime Minister had said, which has been done by the President, and not what the President had decided to do. And this is really difficult to understand. If you have decided to dissolve Parliament on September the 12th, I believe that you have no right to set a special session beyond that date.
In what ways can this go down for President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's government? And do you think this is going to open the door for a stronger opposition?
His dissolving Parliament is something serious, not only at the national level, but also at the international level, because it's the seal of the Republic of Senegal, which has fallen from grace to grass. Now, what would be the attitude of the partners of Senegal, the other countries, the international organizations, the companies signing, agreement with Senegal? What would they make of future signatures of the President? How would they understand? How would they accept to cooperate with a president and with a regime whose signatures doesn't mean much? Because he's not respected his signature. That is to say, to allow Parliament to hold the session, that is to say, to welcome the Prime Minister on September the 13th, means that in the future, what the President may say may not be the right thing to do. And then this will have, I believe, terrible consequences on the respectability of Senegal worldwide, and also in the respectability of Senegal within the country itself, because this is a serious business. And I believe that it is the role of the Constitutional Council or of the Supreme Court to tell the Senegalese whether the President has a right to dissolve Parliament after summoning that Parliament.
So, Professor, why we wait for the next line of action by the 14th legislature? Would there have been a way for the executive and the legislature, the past legislature, to coexist despite Bassirou Diomaye Faye not having a majority?
I believe that this situation prevailing in Senegal, that is to say, the executive is not having a majority at Parliament, is not a particular case. There are many countries where we have that situation. And sometimes what is important is if you place the state above everything, if you place a general interest above everything, I believe that it is possible to sort out this problem, because I don't believe that it is possible for an MP who loves Senegal to reject a policy that can help Senegal move forward. I think if they had chosen to negotiate, if they had place Senegal above particular interest, that is to say party interest, I think that should have been sorted out.
Professor Gorgui Jen is a Senegalese political analyst. Up next is sports news with Sankule Janko.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Confederation of African Football President Patrice Motsepe was conferred with the highest award in Côte d'Ivoire, which is the Commander of National Order, by the head of state of Côte d'Ivoire, President Alassane Ouattara, and the Council of National Orders in Abidjan. The CAF General Secretary, Veron Mosongo, was conferred with the Officer of the National Order Award. President Ouattara said Dr. Motsepe has played a key role not only in the successful delivery of the CAF Africa Cup of Nations, but also changing the face and fortunes of African football. The award by the Ivorian government is also in recognition of Dr. Motsepe's commitment and leadership for delivering the most successful CAF Africa Cup of Nations AFCON in the history of this competition, according to CAF official website. President Ouattara said, "We are exceptionally proud of the work President Motsepe has done since taking over at CAF. The success of the Africa Cup of Nations is thanks to his and CAF's leadership. The award is in recognition of the excellent work he is doing at CAF and in promoting football development in Africa." Ivory Coast was the last country to host the Africa Cup of Nations, which saw the hosts being crowned champions of that tournament. The next AFCON will be hosted by Morocco in 2025. Elsewhere, Nigeria's women under 20 have been knocked out of the FIFA under 20 World Cup. Japan survived a late scare against Nigeria to set up a rematch of the 2022 final with Spain in Sunday's quarterfinals. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Sports was brought to you by Sankule Janko. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukidi and Maojo Juve for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Join Isili Jeju at the top of the hour for the second edition of our comprehensive news package in French Info Chivu. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many